Welcome to the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. This podcast will share information on self-love, living a wellness-filled life, having healthy relationships, how to avoid unhealthy relationships, how to heal from traumatic events, and more. If this is your first time joining us, we welcome you and we hope this will not be your last. Enjoy the show. Hey, y'all. Welcome to our episode of Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. In honor and recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are going to be speaking to one of my friends and colleagues, Roxanne Davis, who is a licensed therapist. And our theme is Look at Me Now. They bent me, but they didn't break me. Look at me now. So we're talking about, okay, yeah, all this trauma you inflicted on my life, but look at me now. And Roxanne, I'll just give a little backstory. Roxanne is the epitome of a look at me now. I met her, she was a participant, or she was a resident at Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh when I met her. And she came to my program, the Healing Space at McGee Women's Hospital. And we bonded because first of all, our names were Roxanne. Both of our mothers had brain cancer and both of them had died from it. And it was just so many similarities. So we just bonded. Roxanne became one of my best volunteers. Now she's one of my dear, dear friends. And she's going to share with her story of Look at Me Now. And before she does that, I'll turn it over to Rhonda.
So good evening, everyone. We are so excited to come back to you live. We had some tech difficulties when we first got started, but if we're not used to them by now, oh well. I think, even though it's been since 2020, this is all still new to us. So thank you for your patience. And more importantly, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. As Roxanne said, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is coming to an end. Well, she didn't say that part, but October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're coming to a close of October, but sadly never a close to domestic violence. You're going to hear some very traumatic events this evening. If at any time you need to take care of yourself, we understand and we respect that. I'm going to give you a phone number now, as well as put it in the chat. I want to give you the hotline number, the 24-hour hotline number to Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. I have to state that this is not a program of Women's Center and Shelter. However, as you're definitely still welcome to use that hotline. As an employee here, I can definitely say you can use that hotline. So that number, as I will put in the chat, but it is 412-687-8005. That's a 24-hour hotline. So if you get triggered by anything, and it's not always your personal story. We've lost a lot of people to domestic violence, celebrities, athletes, and just, of course, family members and friends. And I really I'm sorry, I know I'm going to turn this right back over to Roxanne. I just got a text message today, and it's too current to actually go into detail, but I'll just say I got a text message today from someone in Texas saying that her sorority sister was just murdered. So it doesn't end. It doesn't end on October 31st. So thank you so much again for tuning in with us. And I'm going to either just get started right now, if you would like, Roxanne E. I have to say the last initials this evening. Roxanne E., would you like me to just go ahead and continue and get started?
Sure, why not?
All right. Roxanne D., thank you so much for being here. You're looking beautiful as always. And I'm just going to get us started with asking you if you could share with us in the audience just a little bit about your experience with domestic violence, whatever you're comfortable with starting out with. If you would just start out for us, we'd appreciate it.
Well, unfortunately, almost all of my relationships after I had left home was when I really first started dating, when I had gone to college. College was a big time and that even now is like a breeding ground for domestic violence. We're young. We haven't been educated anywhere in how to have healthy relationships. And I was no exception to that. So it's like relationship after relationship. it just ended in abuse. The thing about those relationships were they really didn't last long when I look back on it as compared to the violence that I had experienced with my son's father. So that one lasted for years. And you would honestly think that by then I would have known better, because I was in my 30s by the time I had met him. And unfortunately, I didn't have many options in getting away. He was taking control, like he, of course, kind of like groomed me. He just started out with this love bombing that, I interpreted as him really caring for me. But once I got pregnant, the violence had escalated. That's when he really felt like he had all the control. And then once I had the baby, not only did he feel like he had control, but now he actually was operating in a way where he had rights over me. It was so bad that he would tell me when I could stand, when I could sit, when I could speak. And I knew all along that I had to get out of that relationship. But again, like I had mentioned, I really didn't have many options. And by that time, I had eliminated, the friends that I once had in my life, because it was quite humiliating for me. And I really didn't want people to judge me or talk about me or make me feel worse about the situation that I was in. Unfortunately, people just don't have the right words to help women when they're in these situations. And it can be quite condemning, and we're already being controlled and condemned and abused, that there really wasn't room for much more. So when I say that, I even include my family in on that. I really didn't, express to them what all that I was going through, because I didn't want to get them involved. And I just wanted to fix it on my own. But months turned into years, and it was starting to look pretty hopeless. So what I was trying to do, the best way that I could, is find whatever little thread of hope that I could grab onto at the time. And it would always be something different. The self-talk wasn't good. Just believing that things could be better for me wasn't good. So that wasn't helping at all. So what I had to do is I just went to what God said about me. And I kind of hung on to that and kept repeating it to myself, that he'll never leave me nor forsake me, that God loves me. The verse where it says, even though I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. That was the only thing that I had that was helping me during that time. So one day back up a little bit. I actually kept moving to get away from my abuser. And each time I would do that, he would follow me and he would break in. And once he would break in, he wouldn't leave. Couldn't get rid of him. So I had gotten an apartment away from him. He moved in there. One day, things escalated. I grabbed my son. I left everything. And I went to my parents' home. My father was deceased at that time. My mother was still there. And, just trying to find safety there. Well, he started coming in there. Then my mother passed away. And then once she passed away, then he really tried to take control of the home. And my prayer at that time was that God could work this thing out in a way where I would be able to hang on to my home, because they left the home, to us. And, I felt like that was the only thing left in the world that I really had. Because my parents were gone, had a very small family, didn't have much family support at all. My brothers had moved away, so they weren't, nearby to be of any support. So one day, a friend of mine who I had gone to college with had found me. She said that she was in a meeting and that God had spoke to her and told her to come to me right now. And she left the meeting not quite sure where the house was because it had been at least 15 or so years since she had visited my mom's home. And she wasn't even sure that I was there. And she felt her way around, knew that I had a son, seen a little boy playing outside, asked him, if he knew me and which house was I in. And it happened to be my son. And he pointed her to me. And she says, I don't know why I'm here. She says, but God sent me. Mm-hmm. So we left the house and got in her car and we rode around. And I just told her a little because, again, I was still living with that shame. Couldn't tell her all of it because it was, people would ask, like, how did she end up here? I had a college degree. I had a good upbringing. Like, it didn't make any sense, So when I got back to the house and we left the house because I wasn't sure if he would walk in. So to keep us both safe, we left, came back. She gave me her number and she said that if you need me, call me. So within that week, things had escalated and I was just in tears, could barely even think straight. And I just called her. Not sure what she could even possibly do to help me. But she told me, she said, I had already contacted the Women's Center and Shelter, and they're waiting for you to call.
All right.
So I called them. And I think that if I had waited until I had calmed down, I still would have tried to reason with it and reckon with it and fix it on my own. But I was so desperate in that moment that I just made that call right then. And they said, we were waiting for you to call. What we need you to do now is go to a safe place and call us so we can send transportation to come and get you. And I did that. And in doing that, I remember crying the whole way, just knowing deep down inside that I would never go back to my home again. And sure enough, I had to relocate because after I got to the shelter, which, oh man, I felt peace for the first time. I'll never forget that feeling. I was able to just breathe and relax and, wasn't waiting for the next shoe to drop. And they were just so kind to me and told me, listen, just take a couple days and relax. And I really didn't even know that's what I needed. And I did. And it was after then that I felt life beginning to come back into me. At that time, I was, I don't know why I take so much pride in this, but I was the longest staying resident at the Women's Center and Shelter. I kept getting extension after extension because I was just having trouble, finding a new home. So anyway, I learned a lot. I got a lot of support in that time. And it was what I needed because I had lost all of that. Like I didn't believe in myself anymore. I didn't trust my own decisions. I didn't find value in my life anymore. And I kept looking back over all the mistakes that I had made, and I was fearful of what lied ahead. I didn't know what to expect about the future. I didn't know how to dream about life being better. Had no idea what it would look like. Yeah. So I had to trust the process. And I had to learn to be patient with myself. So I eventually did find a new location. And that was another step up, another level of peace, It was quiet. I left everything from my past in the past. So at this point, everything was new. The people in my life, the toothbrush that I was using, the streets that I was looking at. And I took on a journey of showing love to myself and didn't know how to begin doing that. I didn't know what self-care was. So I had to think back when I was a teenager, what was it that I liked to do? And I was like, okay, I remember I used to like to, read magazines, and I liked polishing my nails. And that's where I started. And in the magazines, I learned other ways that I can take care of myself. And I'm still on that journey.
So, Roxanne, if I could jump in there right there. Sometimes people don't even realize or think about, getting your nails polished or polishing your own nails does not seem like a big deal. But when you have lost such a big part of you, or anybody who's been through that, when you've lost such a big part of oneself, then the little things is what become just magnified and really, really big. Very powerful testimony, very powerful beginning. Really, really appreciate that. Before Roxanne E. jumps in, I just asked, everybody in the audience might not know what love bombing is. So if you would just give a definition to love bombing, and then Roxanne's going to come back with her question.
Oh boy, love bombing. Who knew that was a red flag? I didn't. It's like, just needing to be with you all the time, needing to know where you are all the time because they care about you. It's almost like being under a microscope, but in a way where it's translated from them as if they love you. I love you so much that I want, I need to know where you are all the time. I love you so much that I need to hear from you, every couple hours, And when that started to not happen, then problems started to arise, and it is a form of control, but not really seeing it like that, just feeling like, oh, they really care about me. I'm really important to them.
Is that equivalent to smothering?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I would new terminology. Well, I do have another question, but I just wanted to make a couple points. You said something that you should have known better because you were in your 30s. I don't want you to feel like that, because that's, to me, like you're blaming yourself. No, you should not. I was in my 30s when my life was almost taken. So I don't think age has anything, you didn't know. Also, you talked about how the violence increased during your pregnancy, and that's typical. I just wanted to point that out so the audience would know that that's a common thing in the perpetrators. And you talked about shame. And I'm always telling people, please do not be ashamed of someone else's behavior. But you don't know that at the time, because I was ashamed of what had gone, what had happened to me. So I get that. You talked about having support, or did you say you didn't have support? But yeah, that support is critical, and you didn't believe in yourself. And that's what my program does now. We're trying to make sure that women, or those who've been violated, love themselves, believe in yourself, and all of that kind of good stuff. And she mentioned that she had two homes, or did you mention that you had two homes? Well, I'll mention it because I remember when I met her, she said, the first conversation we had was, I've lost two homes. And I remember saying, girl, them ain't nothing but some bricks. You're going to get some nicer ones. I wish y'all would see her home now. Okay.
Yeah.
They bent her, but they didn't break her, okay?
That's right.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So so my question is, when you reflect back on that relationship, or I guess the main one, can you name some of the red flags that you may have seen, or may not know, that you may have missed? Some red flags you may have missed. Other than
Well,
the love bombing, that was big. That was a big one there. But were there any others?
yeah, the love bombing was a biggie
Mm-hmm.
because shortly, not too long after that, because I got pregnant, rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so things started to escalate, right? So once it started to escalate, now the control started,
Mm-hmm.
tell me when to speak, when to stand up, where to sit,
Those
you know.
definitely red flags.
Mhm. The financial control, controlling all of the money. And I had no say in any of that. So, but by this time, I knew I was in a bad situation. Just didn't know how to get out. So years it went by before I really was able to leave. Like I could not, and I tried to leave,
Mm-hmm.
but he followed me, So I think it's just really and then of course, by the time he hit me, which is when I was pregnant, I already knew, that physical abuse and mental, psychological abuse, I knew all of that was happening by then,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, Rhonda.
That's a good point because you're saying back then I knew, and it can be gradual. I often say it's going to be rare, not to say it doesn't happen. It's rare that you go out with somebody on the first date, they call you out your name, push you down the steps, right? So on the first date, you don't see it. As people say, when dating starts, people bring the brochure. This is like the pamphlet that I want you to see. It's not really who I am, but this is who I want you to see when you first meet me, right? So I agree with Roxanne that not being ashamed of somebody else's behavior, I think is really critical as well to our whole audience for sure, because we're going to get to how and where you are now. So, but that shame can be something that lingers and it can come back and haunt us over time. So even thinking about the shame, Roxanne, can you share with us how you got to the point where you were comfortable enough to share your story publicly, where you're able to just say, hey, this is where I was. This is what happened to me. I was pregnant and I got abused. This person came into my mother's home and literally took it away from me because of my fear. I had to leave it, right? So if you could just share, how did you get to the point where you're able to share your story?
Yeah, that didn't happen right away because that shame piece was lingering. I still hadn't fully forgiven myself for what I had gone through. And, so some time happened and a lot of healing had to take place. And I had to gain my confidence and then realize for me that it was vitally important that I share my story because it's going to help somebody else.
Absolutely.
So I had to put myself to the side for what I felt was the greater good. And I would imagine maybe that would be different for others, but for me, that's what did it.
Okay.
It's important for me to share so other people won't have to experience the pain that I had gone through so that they can learn from it.
Right. Thank you so much. That is so unselfish. That is so unselfish to be able to say that I'm going to do this for the greater good. Certainly appreciate you sharing that as well. At this point, I'm going to make sure I put the hotline number in the chat so you can see that. Whoever is here online will be able to see that number, and I'll share it again at the end of the program. I'll share it out loud, but I'll put it in the chat for those who are online with us now.
Okay. So we this next question, you kind of talked about it, so I'm going to skip that one. It talks about I'll ask you, but I kind of think you covered it. What are some lessons you've learned that you think would prevent you from experiencing abuse again? And everything you've shared with us already, I already know that's not happening again because you've learned from those lessons. Look, yeah, and then have you healed? We talked about that. So I will ask you that. The question was, have you healed, or is it an ongoing process for you?
Yes and yes.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that. Yeah. Well, okay. So, that was Wanda's question. I stole it.
That's so fun.
Okay, Ron, you can answer the next one then.
Well, I'm actually going to ask Roxanne to just elaborate on
Okay.
the journey in the healing journey, right? Because you used the term when you're opening, when you said self-care, and you're talking about something from years ago. We say self-care now. You can't go a day or two without somebody saying, girl, you got to do self-care. You got to slow down and take. But we weren't talking about self-care then, and I definitely will say, as women of color, we had to be strong. We had to act like we were the superhero, even without a cape, without being able to fly through walls. We had to act like we could fly through walls, right? So I just really would, if you could just expound a little bit on the journey and the piece and the pieces of healing, because I think we have an author on with us this evening. I'm just going to put it out there because I don't know how it came to me like that, but she has a book that she wrote. Patrice Wade Johnson is on screen with us this evening. She wrote a book called Pieces, right? There she is right there. And so maybe I felt her energy, and that's why I said pieces. But if you, Roxanne, would share, what were some of the pieces of your journey? Because it doesn't happen all at once. It takes time. And you know what? I want to say this to Roxanne, to the audience, to everybody, right? Sometimes I think I got them pieces, like if you're putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and I think I got the pieces in place, but when I look back, them pieces, they start crumbling. They're crumbling. They're not the steps that I thought I already took. I might fall back a little bit, and that is okay. It's okay because, first of all, it is a journey. It is a process. It's not something that's going to happen automatically. And because I'm not that superwoman, that's a good song, but I'm not that superwoman. I am human, and it is okay if I fall back sometimes, right? So if you would just share, what are some of the pieces that you did for yourself and your self-care?
Well, that is really a very good term, pieces, because it kind of, one way of explaining it is it boiling down to different parts of me. Most of the stuff that we bring into adulthood is the stuff that we've learned and was deposited into us from childhood. So it just so happened I was adopted, and I have a whole story about that. I was placed in a foster home where I was neglected, crying all the time. Well, I grew up with childhood depression and did not know it. Like, nobody was diagnosing depression at that time. So the doctors would say, oh, some people just cry more than others. So I had to deal with my mental health. And that was the first part of it. Otherwise, I would always see things. I would always see myself under this dark cloud that was always looming over me. And I was always looking through a negative lens at everything that involved me. So I was very judgmental of myself, very disappointed in myself because I should do better. Wasn't having the capacity to do better. So after I dealt with my mental health and I started feeling good, and I describe it to people as beginning to see color for the first time. So a whole lot of hope had gotten deposited into me after that. So I got this book, and it was first, it was a book, Healing the Child Within, and then another book by the same author, Charles Whitfield, called A Gift to Myself, which is a workbook to the original book. And you can do it along with therapy or in lieu of therapy. And it allowed me to process a lot of the stuff that was unresolved in me. And after doing the work with that. So it was an exercise of cognitive reprocessing, like rewiring my brain to not see things from a negative perspective, but to see the positive in everything, including what I had gone through.
Mhm.
Because those were lessons. I mean, good and bad comes together. Not everything is good and everything is bad. Even if it's just this much good, even if it's, I still, my life was spared. Okay,
Wow.
that is a great thing.
Yeah.
You, so, taking the time to look to make sure I'm seeing the good in everything. And I began to see the good in me,
Yes.
the value in me. And then began to build on that. Went back to school, taking all kind of courses, outside of school, went to Bible school, always just wanting to learn, to do better, to grow, develop, to bring out the better parts of me and even accept the parts of me that weren't so good. And that's where the pieces are significant because we all have parts. There's parts of us that loves our job and parts of us that hates our job. Both of them hold valuable information and neither one of them are wrong,
Right.
but we want to process and activate the stuff that motivates us to do better and to be better. And there's parts of us that are protectors and there's parts of us that are holding the wounds. They carry the wounds. The protectors make sure that nothing comes close to that wound. So when we get triggered, that's the protector, that's being activated. So I had a lot of work to do with those protectors. And sometimes, even now, those protectors will get activated and they're only there to remind me, oh, this did happen one day before, but that's not who I am today, And
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no, and just appreciating that part of me that was able to survive that tough time that
Well, I
brought me
was
into
going to
who I
say, I don't know if y'all caught that, but I wrote that one down. Activate to motivate. I like that. Thank you.
Well, you know what?
am.
We only have a few minutes left, and I really want to talk about where you are now, what you're doing with your career and all of that. And then I want to share with the audience about an event that's coming up on this Saturday. But yeah, tell them what you're doing now.
Well, it started with you. Okay. It started with you. I met you when I was at Women's Center and Shelter with the healing space. The shelter had taken us to your workshop and I really connected. Mm-hmm. And I hunted you down that's the best way I can explain it, and ran into you and told you everything that I needed to say because I didn't know if I was going to see you again, but that I would like to work with you and I would like to volunteer because that was a vital part of my healing, giving back and helping someone else. So started working with you and volunteering, and then working as a family development specialist for a program, working with families, with single moms. Then went back to school, got my degree in counseling, and knew that I wanted to work with this population. I wanted that to be my primary focus. So started out, with my internship at a domestic violence program, but then I wanted to focus on trauma and anxiety. So I have a credential in trauma treatment, and I have another credential in anxiety treatment. And that's all that I meet with is women primarily who are experiencing trauma, PTSD, CPTSD. And also I work with a different population. I am contracted to work with a group in domestic violence as well. And now I have my private practice and I work independently. and I absolutely love what I do.
Can I just say that this was a God-led thing, our relationship, because I'm standing at the bus stop, and like she said, when we ran into each other, she pulled out. She said, "Look, I still have your card. I've been trying to hunt you down, or whatever." But and she wanted to volunteer, and me not knowing at the time that there's this thing about you can't volunteer unless you've been out of a relationship for at least 2 years, out of an abusive relationship for at least 2 years. I didn't know that, so I welcomed her aboard. Had I known that, I would have told her no, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here today. So that's why I said this is God. And then we worked together at one of those places that she spoke of, and I could just see when she was working with the Mother to Son program, I could just see her compassion for those moms and for those families, and I was like, oh, she needs to be a therapist. I could just see it in her, and so anyway,
Wow.
that's who she is. And she has, like she said, she's on her practice now. I'm so proud of her. And she is definitely, because we didn't actually say the name of this session. It's called They Bent Me, But They Didn't Break Me. Look at me now. So she,
Yes.
She was not broken all the way. And I'm just so happy and grateful and proud of everything that you're doing. And Rhonda, oh, you're most welcome. I'm telling you. And Rhonda, or should I let you do your thing first and then tell them about this event? Let me tell them about the event first. Rhonda's real good with wrapping up. So there's a domestic violence event this Saturday, and we put the information in the chat. It's by More Light Enterprises, and they're having an event called Shades of Red. A Survivor Speaks, Surviving the Journey Through the Storm of Domestic Violence. And she says, please join us for an inspirational event as women share stories, share survivor stories. And their special invited guests, who happen to be our second podcast guest, is Carla Adams, who's a psychotherapist. And she's a former director of programs from the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. Again, the name of this presentation is called Domestic Violence, Breaking the Silence. Well, I said again, but I'm just saying that for the first time. But it's going to be in Monroeville on this Saturday from 3 to 6, $20. And we put the information in the chat. It's going to be at I can't pronounce it, the Triveni Center, Triveni Center at 275 Center Road. Oh, and by the way, proceeds from this event are going to Women Against Abusive Relationships and the Susan B. Komen Foundation, Breast Cancer Association. So she's going to be giving funding to both organizations in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Rhonda, I'm giving it back to you.
Women Against Abusive Relationships is Roxanne's program that she founded many years ago. And I am so proud of Roxanne, and I never shy away from sharing that, because she has been a program of one, and she has always had volunteers, she's had interns, but she's never given up, because it is her vision and her goal to serve 1 million women. So we are so thankful for those of you, and there may be some men in our audience, and we're just glad for everyone and anyone who has joined us or who may listen to us where you find podcasts. You know, the first time I looked and saw our podcast listed on Apple, oh, you couldn't tell me. You had to open the door a little bit wider to get my head through, because I was so super proud that we have a podcast on Apple. But it's on Apple, Spotify, again, all the places where you may find your podcast, right? So please share this. Everybody's usually say with one person, but we ask you to share it with 5. So please share this with at least 5 people in any way that you choose to, right? So just in closing, Roxanne, I got to start with saying thank you, And thank you again, because you were and you are very unselfish. The question was, how did you start to share your story? And you answered it by saying, because I knew I had to help somebody, that was vitally important. So thank you so much for sharing your story this evening and as you go along. Thank you so much for the little nuggets that you dropped, like that there are pieces to it, right? And there's pieces on the journey, and that you had to deal with your own mental health and your own depression before you could actually, and taking it back to childhood depression, before you could actually gain your hope, as you said, and that reading was also useful to you, that you read some books that was very helpful to you as well. Letting go of the shame, ladies, letting go of the shame. Ladies, and any victim, survivor, or child survivor of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, who's listening, letting go of the shame. It's not yours. It's not. It's really just not yours. Just let it go. And I'm going to continue to activate so I can motivate and keep on doing something different. Thank you, Roxanne. Healing Space Live and Online is coming to you 2 Thursdays of the month. And it is the second Thursday and the last Thursday of the month. It's a joke. I always say the wrong Thursday, but it's the last Thursday of the month when we will be live. And the other one is our recording. So we invite you, encourage you, and ask you to please support us. Thank you. Much love to all.
Thank you guys very, very much.
Once again, we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you heard something which will stick on your mind this week. And even more, we hope that you will find someone to share the message with. We have one request. Please engage with us. Follow us and like and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. We're at warheals_ on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Spelled out, that is WARHEALS_. And on Facebook, you'll find us at War Heals. Please plan to join us next time. And in the meantime, you can find all of our episodes archived wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time on Healing Space Live and Online. Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda.